they talk on threads. They tweet that beef, but I bring real meat. Bacon stacked high, bap game elite. They chat like they know me, they don't know jack. Talking mad smoke while I'm serving a stack. Hash brown hot, with the yolk that runs. I break more fast than 100 nuns. They hate, they try to cancel my stand. Still flipping bats with one greasy hand. False accusations and I ain't shook. My grill speaks louder than 1,000 looks. Yo, I serve bats, not opinions, fam. You want drama? I'm cooking up jam. Code ring to clap back, I'm still the man. You don't like it?
And the questions I sent you are exactly the ones we'll be doing. Like, there's no
Great.
change.
I haven't rehearsed them very much, to be honest. So you'll get authentic answers.
That's what you want. Okay, so just speak louder, just make sure your rings.
Hello, I am talking.
Yep. I know you are. Let me drink water here. Making myself fucking nervous. Right. So, welcome to another episode of the Belfast Bobcast, and today we welcome Adam Irving, guest whose name will send shivers down the spine of the establishment, and that's not because he's committed any form of crime, but because his bloodline and the historical courage behind it. Adam is the grandson of the renowned British historian David Irving, one of the most controversial and censored historians of the 20th and 21st centuries. Vilified, banned, and imprisoned for daring to challenge the official narratives of war, empire. And David Irving paid a very, very steep price, both personally and professionally, for his relentless pursuit of suppressed facts and historical revisionism. So Adam now steps into the light, not as a carbon copy, because he's very much his own guy. I've spent a bit of time speaking to him before, lovely fella. But he is somebody who is continuing the legacy of intellectual defiance and truth-seeking in the age of erasure. So as the head of Irving Publishing, he carries forward the mission of defending the historical record from distortion and control, ensuring that the uncomfortable truths are not buried by convenience or by force. So in this episode, Adam speaks frankly about the impact personally on his family, and then about his grandfather's decades of archival work, interviews, and legal battles, personal and professional fallouts that he's endured, and the future of real history in the era of cancel culture and AI-generated truth. So this is not just an interview. This is a statement that heritage, scholarship, and bravery are not crimes, and that telling the truth is still important, and it should not be radical. So with that in mind, Adam, thank you very much for joining us today. I know you've made the trip over, and it's been great getting a chat with yourself beforehand. So you were on another podcast recently. I believe that was your first like experience.
My first media experience.
And how did you find that?
A little bit nerve-wracking, to be honest. I'm still getting used to doing these kind of appearances. I think my friends would say that I'm not very shy, but I'm quite shy around new people and audiences, so bear with me. But thank you for having me on today. I'm excited to answer any questions that you have. So before we strip away your individuality and just talk about your family for an hour, can you just give us a bit of background on Adam? Me as a person? Just you, just Adam, nothing to do with David. Well, what was I going to say? I was born in London. My granddad's obviously David. I have a half Spanish mum and a Polish dad who separated when I was quite young. At age 10, we moved to Madrid, and I came back for uni when I was 18. and I started my own business in recruitment. So my mum and I had a business in private staffing, so finding wealthy families, butlers, nannies, housekeepers, that kind of thing. And then when my granddad fell ill a year and a half ago, I got more involved with the book business and the publishing, and it's been a big adventure ever since.
So whenever we talked before agreeing to do the interview, you were saying that you were just over the last year and a half familiarizing yourself with your grandfather's work, and obviously it's quite extensive. So that's quite a burden of knowledge to try and undertake. How have you went about?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is that even at school, I went to a British school in Madrid, and when we were doing our GCSEs, we had an option to either do history or do geography. And I chose geography because they were going to be studying World War II history at that point. And I just knew that it was going to be very sort of quite an uncomfortable lesson from sort of the little I did know of David's work at that time and what the official narrative that the school books would be giving us. So I decided to skip it.
When were you first sort of made aware of like the gravity that the family name carried?
I remember when I was a child, I think that the court case with Deborah Lipstadt happened in 99. So I was only a few years old. And I remember watching the news, and that would have been peak David Irving fame really around then. It was sort of on the 6 o'clock news. That was really when I first realized that our family was a little bit different.
To say the least. And around that trial, what age were you?
Sorry, can you repeat?
What age were you around the time of that trial?
I think I was probably about 7 years old.
So conscious enough to sort of take it in?
Yeah, I mean, conscious enough to realize it was happening, but maybe not
understand
not understand really how big of a deal it really was, or how it was unusual to be in a family.
So do you have any childhood or like adolescent recollections of like smear campaigns that you had to avoid, or like having to lie low, or were you always kind of sheltered from it? Or
I guess my mum tried to shelter me as much as she could,
as any mother would.
But if I'm really honest, the biggest enemy kind of came from within my family unit. I mean, my mum and dad by that point were divorced, and I was living with my mum, but I would see my dad on weekends, and he has a Polish background. His dad fought in the resistance for the Poles, which was a unit that was, I think, later led by the Brits. And although my Polish granddad was actually very interested in my English granddad's work, my dad, for some reason, just completely had it in from David for the day one. Because I don't know why he married my mum when he hated my granddad so
personally,
So really, I mean, the most grief I got was from my dad regarding my granddad, and he wasn't really able to separate different individuals in the family.
Your own identity, regardless of your grandfather.
Yeah, my dad was odd. He would accidentally call me by my mum's name and things like that growing up.
It's pretty odd,
So that was difficult in terms of sort of the public kind of side of things. If it caused any issues at school or anything like that, not really. Not in a direct way. I remember feeling quite different as a child for whatever reasons, and not feeling very understood. I don't know if it's probably as a result of several things, including that, and it didn't help. We later moved to Madrid, where there was a bit more distance, both from David Irving and my dad.
Yeah,
and
more anonymity, I suppose, as well.
Yeah. And that helped. Trying to think. I mean, most of the public-facing drama has occurred since taking over the publishing house.
Were you prepared for the gravity of what that entailed, taking over the publishing house?
I'll go back to that in a second. But actually, I do remember one incident where it was affecting the family. When we were in Madrid, I remember when David got arrested and went to prison in Vienna, we were in Madrid, and I remember my mum was working as a PA for a multinational company. One of her jobs was taking the newspapers in the mornings. And so her first job of the day was to take in the Spanish newspaper El Mundo with David on the front cover of the newspaper.
And have a poker face.
Yeah.
As bringing it in.
I mean, there's been lost opportunities we've had with the recruitment agency that I was running. I'm sure we've lost a lot of business from clients not coming to us to begin with as a result of, our family name, because the agency's called Irving Scott, so we didn't try to hide it at all, which people are surprised about. They always wonder, why did you name your company after this notorious individual? But at the end of the day, it is our surname.
You fly the flag, especially, you know, and it's the notoriousness of that name that sells also. With great controversy comes great recognition also.
Well, what I will say is our accountants a couple of years back put us in touch with a certain comedian who's very famous and Jewish. And I don't think he knew who we were at the beginning. And I think we had a Skype call with him. And as soon as he realized who we were, that job
would sever the relationship
disappeared. And suddenly they were no longer in need of a nanny for their newborn.
You would wonder that, wouldn't you? Obviously, these things are what they are. You can't really, you can't go back and change what your grandfather done. Did having spoken to your grandfather now as you've got a bit older, has he ever expressed like regret over anything? Or
I think maybe towards how things played out with Josephine, my aunt. I think the only time that my mum's really seen him cry was at her funeral. So I think he did carry some guilt with him for that, maybe. But in general, no, I think that the truth has always been the most important thing to him. It sort of came before everything. His death came before everything.
Fearlessly before everything. And how was it your personal life, socially, professionally, emotionally, being in Irving? Like once you were like aware of the gravitas of the surname, and has it
helped or hindered?
Well, we know that it's going to have hindered, but has it exposed certain people? Like people who you thought were friends has been no.
I mean, I was a bit mental throughout my 20s. I'm 32 now, so I might not be able to, I did sort of my own share of wrongdoing throughout the years, but I had several Jewish friends sort of throughout my 20s in London. And I have to say, like, now I don't really. I don't know if that's as a result of David and becoming more close to my work, or just generally like having friends sort of fall away. But there's been parties and things like that I haven't been invited to because someone said to me, I don't mind you being there, but there's such and such will mind that you're there. And I'm thinking, but you should be standing up for me then. Why are you standing up for some people who are going to take me with the same brush as my granddad? They don't even know what I stand for.
Yeah, and that's indicative of today's society, really, isn't it? People are like, I don't disagree, but I'm not willing to stand up and sort of take it on the chin either. But to get into more serious stuff about David, what would you say his most important contribution historically is from what you have undertaken since you've took over?
Gosh, that's such a difficult question. Let me think for a second. Historical contribution.
Yeah, so may it be the correction of something, may it, I would say, like, my example.
I think I can probably answer. I mean, I think his first book was very important, the destruction of Dresden, because until that point, people really didn't know about the damage that the Allies had caused. And, we have all these sort of regulations now about not being able to touch civilians, but that was basically, firebombing of a whole city of people, hundreds of thousands of people, if David is right, of mainly civilians. And that wasn't really known about until David wrote a book on it, because pre-internet times, he went over to go and work on a steel mill from memory, and got chatting, and this whole story came up that Brits didn't really know about, or the West didn't really know about. And that's how the whole thing got going. And he started speaking to like staff who had worked for Hitler, so like his personal assistant and his secretary, and
he became quite close to some of these people as well.
Yeah, I mean, he treated them as humans, not as Nazis and monsters, and got to know them and built trust with them. And as a result, they gave him access to a lot of records that hadn't really been seen before, or had been conveniently swept to one side.
I think the irony about David's work is, on the one hand, people would describe it as being so forensic and so thorough, but on the other hand, he's a revisionist, or you know, telling lies. Which one is it? You know, those who know the facts know that he's only ever went to the archives and only ever reported that which he's found. He hasn't added to or taken away from, and that's clearly uncomfortable for people. I
think so. He's also, I find that, like, from what I kind of gathered, like, the books are just sort of like very detailed forensic sort of analysis of what went down. But then I think because there's been a few sound bites where he's said some very outrageous things. I find a lot of what he says quite funny and entertaining, but it's obviously a very serious subject, which is where I think a lot of the offense has been taken. But I kind of separate the books from some of the things that he's really said. But I would say he's a revisionist, but he's not a Holocaust denier per se, because he never said that didn't happen.
No, and then that takes us on to the trial, where they went over and studied the brickwork, and the supposed gas chambers were found zero traces of Cyclone B, but yet in the delousing chambers it was alive and present.
Yeah,
and that gas chamber expert was litigated in the prison as opposed to fighting against the findings.
Was it because he took the samples without permission? Or and then
the most ridiculous reasoning ever. David has obviously throughout life had many adversities, shall we say, when going in and out of different countries, and faced arrest and faced like unnecessary scrutiny, but has continued in the face of that. Would you find, as a grandson, did you find that inspiring? Like that sort of unwitting, like...
I do find it inspiring, because I think it would have been much easier for him to just have more of a mainstream opinion, and when things sort of got too rough, to just sort of like rein it in slightly, and it would have probably made him a lot more money, and we'd probably still have a large apartment in Mayfair. And he decided not to go down that route, which I'm sure most of our family are not happy about. But you got to respect someone who really, it wasn't about money, was it?
And at a point, he was like the publishing house's
darling of the media.
Like, he was the man, and then
bad boy of history.
Yeah, and whenever people start hearing uncomfortable truths that don't fit the narrative, then all of a sudden he's a bastard.
I also wonder whether when he started his career, which would have been in the 60s, if the establishment was maybe more on his side at that time, and then somehow
there's been a shift.
There was a shift, but he didn't shift with it, and therefore he sort of ended up on the wrong side. Someone sent in an article a couple of years ago. I haven't looked too much into it, but it did suggest that he was on a watch list from on an MI5 watch list from the early days.
Of course he's going to be.
And there was they kind of inferred that the head of MI5 at that time was a communist, and that basically there was an offshoot of MI5, I can't remember what it was called, had a very respectable name, and their job was basically to pump some authors and to sort of what do you call it, make sure that other authors sort of didn't look respectful, and he was on that list. So from the early days, there has been sort of a campaign to smear him, I suppose. And I always wondered, why does the government need to get involved when it comes to the truth? Surely the truth can, stand for itself. It doesn't need people to sit there defending it.
Well, I think that is the very reason, is because your grandfather was, at certain points with the information that he uncovered, attacking the narrative, the mainstream narrative, and that never sits comfortable. And once you kick back against that, it doesn't matter how well liked you were before, you're automatically an enemy. There's no in between part where you're sitting in limbo. You're either with or not.
I was told that a lot of his archives were confiscated by the British government. I'm not exactly sure when, and then he won some legal suit that said that
early 2000s he got like most of the stuff taken off him. Yeah.
I don't know if this was separate from the Lipstadt trial, and I know that he had a real battle to get it returned, but when it was returned, a lot of information was gone and was just never given back. We even had a real, he used to be a meticulous diary writer, and he'd write a diary every day, and we were looking for it recently. We're looking for like a record of every year, and we found a lot of the diaries from the 60s, 70s, and then sort of around the 80s, it was gone. And I looked, we had a very messy sort of archive, just random boxes, which I've been trying for a long time to get into
organization. Yeah,
we couldn't find anything. The only thing we could find were like snippets from different bundles from the legal trial where they had made photocopies of these diaries, some excerpts. And then I almost gave up, and we're at his flat one day, and there was just like a box of old CDs, and I opened it up and it had all the missing diaries on it. So obviously the originals had gone.
Yeah, but they kept the copies.
Kept the copies.
That's class.
It was really lucky though, because even CDs actually expire after a certain amount of time.
7-year-old battery, or
they were on CD, but we can find the originals.
Okay.
Of those missing ones, yeah.
So you've only recently properly connected with your granddad. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and actually, strangely enough, since he's fallen ill, like we have become quite close. I mean, he's aware that like I've been running things, and we do pass things by him. And he seems very happy, and he's comfortable at home. And we built a new relationship in a way that we didn't really have before. I think I was telling you before we were on air that like sort of the longest conversation I really had with him prior was maybe like an hour, an hour long. We would spend like a lot of time around him. We were so involved in his work that we never really had like long conversations.
And that, well, we've talked at length of the strain that's had on the family. What books have you been able to consume so far?
Banged Up, his prison memoir.
Okay,
I've read that, and I actually read that when I was quite young. I found it quite interesting. We're making that into an audiobook at the moment. One of the things that we've been doing is bring his voice back, because he's lost his ability to speak. So through old samples, we've been able to use AI to get him to speak, which is scary but cool. That we're able to do that now.
It's equal parts scary and cool, really, isn't it? Like I've spent endless hours listening to your grandfather speak, and even just irrespective of the content, just a very therapeutic voice, just nice to listen to speak,
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people. It was very, very easy.
Well, my mum was telling me stories that when she was a kid, he used to tell them amazing bedtime stories, children's stories, and everyone in the family was like, why couldn't he go into writing children's books?
He probably would have been the best children's writer ever to have walked the earth.
Well, Roald ended up quite controversial now, hasn't he?
Well, he was a British spy.
Was he?
Yeah, he was a spy during war.
I didn't know that. I mean, we studied him at school a little bit, but isn't he now known as being an anti-Semite as well?
Or? Oh, half the words are anti-Semite. Do you believe your grandfather was punished for being wrong or punished for being right?
I think he was punished for being inconvenient to certain groups of people. I don't believe that anyone should be put in prison for having an opinion. You know, this is not someone who's ever killed anyone, harmed anyone. Yeah. I mean, apart from having hurty words, maybe.
Imagine.
If that's where we're going to set the bar at now for imprisoning people, I think we've got a very scary dystopian future.
Everybody would at least be doing a stint if that was the case. And
you know what? When it wasn't happening in Austria to him, I never really paid that much attention, even though obviously it was horrible for our family. But it didn't scare me because, you know, these are laws that were happening somewhere else. But we're now living through a time in the UK where people like Lucy Connolly have gone to prison for an extensive period of time for a mum. For having said something stupid on Twitter that nobody was going to act on what she had said. No. You know, it might have been like not the right thing to say, but that's something that deserves a slap on the wrist, not a year and a bit prison sentence.
But it's indicative of the times we're in. You know, Western societies became that comfortable that we've now went to the lengths of looking for insult and you know, hurt and pain.
But yet real crime isn't being addressed. That's what I just find so... I can't really wrap my head around it. I mean, if you look at someone like Hugh Edwards, for example, consuming child porn. Yeah. You might say that consuming child porn doesn't mean that you've enacted in pedophile behavior of a kid, but somebody's produced that material. So there is harm because you need to have someone is having to produce that for that audience. So for me, that's one of the most disgusting crimes really that you can commit. Probably the worst crime.
Well, it's I mean, for most normal people, that's the worst crime. Yeah.
And yet he gets let go of a suspended sentence off of his nice little retirement package. And then you have someone like my granddad who ends up in prison for a year and a half for a debate about numbers or methods of execution.
So, while we're on your granddad and legal issues, let's talk about the famous trial. Miss Lipstadt, is that the surname, or how did you pronounce it?
Lipstadt,
something.
She's been back in the press recently.
Yeah, well, Miss Lipstadt, just a wee reminder, who you proudly proclaimed you were funded by was Les Wexner. Who did Les Wexner also fund recently?
Jeffrey Epstein.
How's that sitting with you now? Anyway, around that trial, it was a pretty horrific time for obviously your grandfather, but family as a whole. It was around the time your auntie.
I was very young. My aunt had schizophrenia, which developed when she was about 16, and I think she was 33 when she took her life. We can go into detail about that in a second, but it was happening at the same time that the trial was happening. And so she was very ill with schizophrenia. She had already tried to take her life once and ended up in a wheelchair. My granddad was very close to her when she got sick. I think he didn't know how to handle what was going on, maybe in the best way, but he did try and be as supportive as possible, and really tried to help her in the ways that he could. And while this trial was happening, where he, for the most part, ended up defending himself against this colossal sort of machine defense. She died, and when the funeral happened, they sent a wreath to the church. Apparently a very
German phrase stating
truly a merciful death by Philip Bowman and friends. And he was the head of the eugenics program for the Nazi party. So we can sort of guess who sent those flowers. This very fancy black wreath.
Yeah, I mean, there's Sounds like a very like Lipstadt Wexnerish thing to do.
It does. What did he call it? He used to call these things destabilization techniques.
Well, it's to get you to at the rawest possible emotion, like to act out.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get a rawer time in your daughter passing. And if
I can't imagine how that feels to be full of grief
and to get goaded into horrible. And it just goes to show the level of evil that you're dealing with there. Because most people,
I mean, even gangsters have a code of honor.
yeah, I was going to say, like, even most people around circumstances of death have moral codes, whether the person owes you money, whether whatever, their daughters just died, just, you know, bit of respect, but not Miss Lipstadt, I'm afraid, or allegedly, because we don't want you getting Jeffrey or Waxner to fucking.
I mean, Deborah seemed very proud of the fact that she had this Wexner money investment.
I doubt she'd be as proud now.
No, I don't think so.
would you be shouting about it now? I doubt it.
So, I mean, I'll send you a copy of this video we did after, because one of the things I found whilst sort of looking into my granddad's affairs was a video. Well, to go back a minute, I think it's 2016, they came out with a movie called Denial, where Rachel Weisz plays Deborah Lipstadt, who's Daniel Craig's wife. So James Bond's wife.
Such a representation, yeah.
Plays this woman, and then they get Timothy Spall, great actor, but not the best looking guy, to play my granddad. My granddad was a pretty good looking guy when he was younger. And it's
all about optics.
So they kind of do this weird, like, upside downy world Hollywood thing that Hollywood does. And in the opening scene, there's and the trailer goes, you know, I will not debate with a Holocaust denier. And it's all sort of like, they sort of put these shadows on him, so he looks like he's sort of crawling out the
abyss,
the shadows. And then they have, you know, her, she's sort of beautiful and confident, this great hair, and sort of, you know,
couldn't be any further from reality.
But I don't know, and I would like to hear if anybody had ever seen this footage before, because I haven't been able to find it online until we posted it. But I was looking through like an old box of CDs again and came across filmed footage of where he ambushed her and basically said, you know, there's $1,000 or £1,000 for if you can prove what was it again, that basically the Holocaust happened in the way that she was saying, the gas chambers. Because she claimed in the real version of events on this video that I found, that she had a blueprint that she would show to students, an original blueprint of where they put the pellets through and all this. And then he's basically saying, you know, if that document exists, why don't you show your students? You're telling the students that this document exists, and yet, you know, I can't find it. And Julie said, I won't debate you. It's not what went down, and, you know, what went down in the Hollywood version was portrayed very different. So I did a side-by-side, and maybe you can play it too. I'll send you a copy. And then we pieced together Ava,
reality,
and then we put in her like little clip about where she's, you know, proudly saying that Lex Wessner funded this whole thing. I think Steven Spielberg also put quite a lot of money in, but basically she got major funding from the Jewish community.
It's amazing the people that put the money in to fight your grandfather.
Yeah, and it's a little bit unfair. I mean, it's difficult because maybe he shouldn't have bothered, you know, suing her for libel. Maybe he should have just continued on with his career. But
I understand though why, because everything about his life at that point was adversarial. Everybody was attacking him, and why would you not fight every fight? Because, you know, he's getting attacked in every possible turn. Like, he's entering countries, he's being turned away, he's getting strip searched, he's getting put in prison, he's not allowed into certain countries, all because he's dared to go to the archives.
But he would never have been allowed to win that case. He could have had the most solid
legal
arguments, and it's never going to end them. Even the fact that it happened and it became such a big thing. I mean, I don't think they would have allowed it to had so much publicity unless they already knew who was going to win.
Arguably, he represented himself extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Just what chance do you have against that level of defense? You know,
I mean, I've had some stories. I mean, I don't really know if I should say this, but I had stories, and I don't know if this is true,
allegedly,
that one of his book publishers was in a gentleman's club, and he was overhearing sort of judges sort of speaking in the leather chairs behind him, and they're sort of going, "Oh, how are we going to take this David Irving guy down? You know, he really must disappear from sort of public consciousness."
That most definitely like, you know, those things happen all the time.
Of course they do. I mean, you know, anyone who thinks that, you know, our justice system is completely fair, it's delusional.
But it must be mind-boggling from the inside, just like trying to live life thinking things are normal, and then like probably very early on you're like forced to confront, right, all these power structures are bollocks, you know. Like everything around me here is kind of like a facade, you know, without...
I think this is why people don't like to look too much into these subjects as a whole. I think once your reality's been broken and you start to realize that, you know, all these powerful institutions, the establishment, don't work for the good of the general person. They're there to protect certain people's business interests.
Yeah.
I think it's too painful for a lot of people to look at.
It's painful, and people like to live in a comfort zone.
A bit like the Matrix.
Yeah. You know, it may be a lot more comfortable just to continue with the lie, as opposed to, you know, how many people would be equipped to deal with what your grandfather dealt with on a frontline basis, never mind what you as a family had to contend with, you know. His strength of character, to have the balls to contest that as a person, and then have the faith in his family structure to know they're strong enough to deal with that as well. It's a lot to take on.
Probably quite like a lonely place to be, even if you are a very public person. To live that kind of life, it can't be easy. Because we, and you know, even within our family, obviously, you know, for everyone around him, it was hard. So he would have got a lot of grief from family members. Well. It's like, why are you still doing this? And it's very hard for someone from even within a family who isn't in that position to really understand.
Yeah, well, it's like anything in life, until you've that lived experience, you can only surmise what it is like. And even I would have blindly assumed that your life would have been a lot more impacted, and I was quite shocked to find out that you only really, you know, were starting to familiarize yourself with stuff, because I would have thought like it would just be consuming the entire family tree.
I had some very strange experiences since taking over this enterprise. My phone really started acting up last year. Well, I was telling you that like our website had been hacked into.
Yeah.
We've had to put in so many security measures and we have a server which could deal with hosting google.com, because it's under such attack that we have to have about 20 different layers of security, and they still try, because what this group was trying to do was copy customer data for who knows what reason. We managed to stop that. Where they wanted it to go, I have no clue. So that was the first sign that, you know, we were being monitored.
I have a fair idea.
And then my phone started acting up, and I was actually on the way to some friends I knew who live in Nicaragua, random country to go.
It is random.
But I thought I'll go out for a couple of months. I'll sort of relax in their house and sort of just, you know, I'll work from my laptop while I'm gone. And I actually missed my first flight, and they put me on another flight for the next day. So my mom's driving me back from the airport, and we stop off at sort of one of those like motorway service stations. She whacks out her phone, and all this weird stuff is already happening by this point. And out of her phone, she's on the home screen. It's just showing us a list of that. Nothing's open. We hear 3 what I think are Israeli folk speaking out the phone. So it sounded like instead of pressing the record button, they just press the speaker button, and they couldn't hear us. We were trying to be like, hello, who are you? And it literally wouldn't turn off until we stopped the phone, until we switched the phone off. It was really freaky. And I'd have thought I was insane if it wasn't for the fact that my mum was there too.
Yeah, that is going to be a pinch yourself moment, especially if like there's no response when you're shouting like hello.
This stuff sort of does make you go paranoid, and then you start spotting it everywhere. But I've had times since taking over where it's been quite clear to me that there's been sort of an oddball sitting right next to me, sort of just listening. I went out with 2 friends from the movie industry who were going to help me digitize some stuff that we had, film reels and whatever. A friend of a friend. I'd never met them before. I met them through my friend Bill, and we're sitting down outside of a pub, and all of a sudden I just realized there are 3 single gentlemen at the table surrounding me outside, all by themselves, all drinking just a pint on the mobiles. One guy with an earpiece sort of listening like that, like he was on his headphones. It's like, oh, we're being monitored. And it freaked the 2 guys out that we're working with so much that they decided not to get involved in the project.
No, working with this. So, like, obviously taking all this into account, what's your mission with Irving Books going forward?
I just want to keep David's material available, accessible, and out there, and that's been a challenge in itself. Obviously, we're also trying to get Church of War Volume 3 out, which is going to be the final book that David releases. And he had finished it, but it hadn't gone through editing when I picked it up. And obviously, being someone who's not super well acquainted with the subject matter, it's been a little bit difficult to try and even find it. But it's going through editing at the moment. We're keeping it exactly like David would have wanted, but obviously just tidying things up so that, because there's various like versions that were written, and it's sort of
just deciding which one was supposed to be.
Yeah. And maybe a forward or something like that. So on sort of list of like what we're trying to do now, it's really to safeguard his work. That's sort of mission number 1.
Outside of the work that is already published on Volume 3, is there any unpublished stuff that hasn't been seen?
There's an unpublished manuscript from 2007 that's there, which potentially might get released one day. And we have a ton of archival material, which for the last year, I've had someone pretty much full time just scanning and digitizing.
Okay.
And we're very shortly, probably this Monday, gonna launch our website, irvingcollection.org, where people will be able to access all the material that we still have that David based his books on. So that instead of believing what David is saying in his book, they can literally go to the sources themselves. And the most interesting stuff that he has in there, from my perspective, comes from the KGB archives, because he was the first Western historian allowed into the Soviet Union, into the archives, in order to translate Goebbels' diaries into English, which were serialized, I think, for the Sunday Times. And when he was leaving, the story goes that the archivist said, here you go, here's a box of material. And I think he sort of got through the top layer of it, and probably because he's very got a one-track mind, so he's probably working on a different project where it wasn't relevant back then. He sort of went through the first top layer of reels, and the box says KGB archives, top reel read, rest hasn't been read, or something like that. And we've been digitizing all that. So there's a big chance that a lot of that material has never been seen before.
Even by him.
Yeah. There's hundreds of thousands of pages.
And what possible stuff is in there? Do you know what I mean? Are you about to start something that's going to get you even more into space?
Well, in a weird way, I've been wondering how to deal with it, because also one thing I noticed is that everything that was sort of nearest to him physically was the most important. And that was sort of like in his bedroom at the time. It's not there anymore, so don't go looking for it. But it's very safe.
Okay, so obviously that was on his to-do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And I think he didn't even have there's a lot of specialist equipment involved. And we've had to sort of find that and get acquainted with how to even scan it and all this kind of thing. So
it's all fascinating. even just from a outsider, like just this fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested. I mean, one Jewish friend that I still have, I mean, she was saying to me, you're opening Pandora's box at this. You should lock it away or burn it and never to be seen again.
Certainly understand the potential gravity of what you're dealing with. So I think you do.
But there's several ways to look at it. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's coming from the Soviet archives, how much can we trust it anyway? That's probably going to be one argument that people are going to have. On the other hand, if it is truthful, what is there to fear? It's just all it's going to do is build a better picture of what really did happen.
Well, I think that's the great thing about your grandfather's work, as well, the work that he tried to get out there, was that there was no narrative behind it. He went to the archives and he reported what he found. And
now it's time for the next generation to do their job.
So that
helped me look.
Well, yeah, that leads me on nicely. So what would you say to the next generation of historians, the ones that are afraid to ask the wrong questions?
I'd say don't be. Say, if you want an easy life, go and work at Oxford University or something, but then you're going to be dictated to what you're allowed to say.
Your parameters.
And these institutions, they all get their funding from various different groups and organizations, and oh, sorry, let me turn my.
That's okay.
And they're all tied to these institutions, and therefore they kind of know what they're allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say. Whereas if you are independent, like my grandfather is, you have a lot more freedom. And I think nowadays, as we know from sort of podcasting world and all sort of thing, there's multiple ways of making money. So I would imagine that it's almost easier nowadays to not be with a large and to be an individual doing your work rather than being associated to.
Yes and no. It's easier to be independent and be self-published, etc., but it's still every bit as difficult to
make money,
your message out there and get.
Well, when you get the platform,
if it's uncomfortable, and taking the next level of historian into account, like what are they even going to have access to? Is it just going to be AI generated algorithms that tells them this, that, and the other, or are they still going to have access to archival footage and
I mean, there is a new generation of historians who are sort of millennial and Gen Z age. There's one guy called Zoomer Historian who we've worked with a little bit. I'd be very happy for him to have access to our archives free of charge in order to, further research these topics. So, any serious academics who want to get in touch and we'll help them out.
The work is there.
Yeah.
It's important work, and I think that's, just because it's been and gone doesn't mean it's not important. I mean, there's a reason why your grandfather was attempted to be silenced and why so many nefarious things happened to him, because this is what happens when you start to expose uncomfortable truth. And we've talked extensively about how family life suffered from that and all the rest. Would you say that going forward now, understanding the responsibility and the impact that it's had on your family already, you must have a certain amount of conviction in it as well to take it?
So one thing that my granddad and I do share is I don't think that either of us are afraid of challenging the sort of mainstream narrative. So I can't say that I had a massive interest in World War II history until I got involved. I'm a lot more interested now.
Yeah.
But because it has sort of fed into, I used to love reading about supposed conspiracy theories and 9/11, all these kind of topics. And it is amazing since I got involved, like how it all starts to interlink. And so that's actually brought me,
full circle, really.
Yeah, it's odd.
So your grandfather's supporters, as much as he has his haters, I can only imagine his supporters are fanatical, and I think it's important to get the message across to people out there that David unfortunately is not in a position to do public speaking or to engage or anything like that at the moment, and to respect that, and understand that he's human as well. And
there was when I think the only large newspaper that wrote about his illness was the Daily Mail, and some of the comments were so disgusting after he fell ill that it didn't even feel like it was real people writing these comments.
Yeah, you find that the people who espouse inclusivity and all these things have the most visceral opinions. I hope your kid dies or something.
It's really odd because the right has sort of right-leaning people have been given such a
but seem to be the more civilized.
They seem to be more respectful of other people's opinions than the left are. They're sort of more open-minded, and you'd always assume it's the other way around.
I would say they're more, not necessarily more open-minded, but certainly more live and let live. That they're prepared to have two different opinions that coexist in the same room, whereas the left seems to be, if you dissent from my opinion, you must be shut down.
Because sort of as a general rule, the right seem to be more focused on their family unit, and everything else sort of is like, well, I'll take care of my wife, my kids, my family. But the left seems to be so interested in getting involved in everybody's business. Yeah. I think that's probably why they care if somebody disagrees with their opinions.
And such a different time now. I can only imagine what the world would be like if your grandfather was breaking the waves now that he was back then.
Would he have been allowed, or would he just been put in prison straight from the beginning? I was
just going to say, if not exterminated at first possible chance, he would have been.
I mean, I'm worried. I mean, how long is it going to take until something I say on Twitter lands me in a jail cell for a while?
And I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be something you say now. It just has to be something that you're reposting or resharing or whatever. And I think that's the beauty of your grandfather's work, is that when it boils down to, people can say whatever the fuck they want.
What if the whole country just posted something ridiculously stupid that could get you arrested? Surely they can't arrest everyone.
No.
We could start a movement.
Well, we could, but I think we both know that's not really going to
work. Most people have jobs. That's the thing. People self-police nowadays, because if you're working for a large company and your opinions you can get fired. And it should be down to the quality of your work, not what your opinions are outside of the workplace. Why do you have to share the same morals and values as your company does?
It makes no sense.
No,
it makes no sense. But then again, not a lot of stuff does in today's world. And I don't even think your granda could have really navigated today's climate, because it's so, there's no space for truth is truth, and that's that. I mean, there wasn't, and there's even less now. You know what I mean? He faced those troubles back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when things were seen as relatively free speech, but now, they just would have not been platformed.
Well, we don't have freedom of speech anymore, at least not in this country. America seems to be holding on to some degree.
To some degree, but I think they're being hoodwinked too by Mr. Trump,
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Trump, I held some faith, and then as soon as he got in and some of the things that he's done, it just...
His biggest donor is Sheldon Adelson. Big nose, small. That should tell you all you need to know. Adam, I hope this interview hasn't been too, you're not your own person, because it's been great to speak to you as well. But obviously the interest is in your grandfather's work, and that's what you're undertaking. Can you let the people know, would you tell me you're on about 20% off of the KGB?
Yes, so we're happy to give your listeners a 20% off coupon code if you use the coupon Belfast
Babcast.
Sorry.
If you use the term Babcast at irvingbooks.com, When checking out, you will get 20% off your purchase. And you are in the process of releasing the KGB archives and trying to get together Churchill Volume 3.
Yeah, that plus a lot of other like little side projects. So my actually one thing we haven't discussed, both my great grandparents on my granddad's side were also writers, so we've been getting those books back into print too. So John Irving, his dad, wrote some books on World War One, and his mum Beryl Irving was an illustrator who also wrote a couple of children's books. One was sort of like an early Harry Potter style book called The Dawn Child.
So it was meant to be like it was just in him, clearly.
Yeah, it's weird. And then I think even if you go further back, there's a few writers. So it seems to run in the family. It's obviously skipped me.
Were they all as fearless as David?
I don't think that they were so controversial. I mean, The Dawn Child is a beautiful children's book, but the battle books that my great granddad wrote, I think one of them was made into a silent film, Coronel and the Falkland. I think he was one on, might have been on PQ 17, or one of the sister boats. I think went up through Russia and things.
Okay.
But he was an interesting guy. So my granddad actually co-wrote a book with him called The Smoke Screen of Jutland in the final years of my great granddad's life, and that's actually where they reconnected, because he had a relatively absent father, and the mum basically sort of raised them, which is quite hard. And but they reconnected in later years and wrote this book together, which was I think was quite nice for my granddad.
That must have been quite a bonding experience, because you're going to have to like really get into the weeds when writing the book, obviously. Did you meet your great grandfather as well, or?
I didn't. I think my mum was actually only barely met him. She would have been she was very young when he passed away.
And without getting into specifics, how is like your mum and the greater family, like the wider family now?
My mum's always been, I think her and Jessica were the closest to my granddad. And we're also the ones who, we've been back in London for a long time, whereas our family sort of spread throughout the world. Yeah. So physically, we've been close, and we've been able to help. The others never really wanted so much involvement. And when he fell ill, there were a lack of finances, and we did what we could. And I think we did what we could quite well in order to keep him at home, full-time care, and all the costs associated.
Big responsibility,
with that. It is a big responsibility. So not only are we taking care of his legacy, but we've also been taking care of making sure that he can stay at home. Because I don't want to imagine what would happen to him in an NHS care home. I mean, it's bad enough if you're just any regular person.
I think it's hard for people to separate such a strong character. Like you almost, there's almost that aspect of they're almost not real, because they're like, you've just watched them and like admired their work or whatever over the years. It's almost hard to think of them in a fragile position, because of like how fearlessly he stood up against things. And, but that's just the journey of life, I suppose. And I'm sure he's taken it as dignified as everything else in life. And just,
it's interesting that I just realized that him and his father built a relationship towards the end, and I feel like me and David are sort of connected towards the end. So I guess it's quite nice in a way that we've been able to bond.
And there's obviously a bit of poetry in that too, like a bit of, it is nice. And from what I can gather of David, from what you're saying personally, that was more of a struggle than the public life.
Yeah, he's a complex individual, and he's extremely talented, but he's got laser-like focus.
Well, you're not going to produce the works that he's produced without that focus.
No.
And what has been his greatest strength probably was also his greatest weakness in certain aspects of life. And,
nowadays people probably get diagnosed with something like autism, and I've got some ADHD label, but I think it was probably better before, where, you know, all these illnesses are actually sort of superpowers in a way. They're not illnesses at all. So all these people who sort of like nowadays sort of tell themselves, oh, poor me, I've got this sort of that disorder. You need to take the good out of it. And I think that that's what he did with his, you know, what he was given. So he was given this amazing brain. Might not be the most empathetic brain, but it was
his ability to remember and recall specifics, like laser point specifics, was ridiculous. Like it could hold a 3-4 hour long talk and not like get a thing wrong. Well,
the doctors actually did a brain scan a year ago, and they said, we don't know how this person is still alive, how they're still functioning. There were so many holes in his brain from where he's had strokes. And I really believe it's because I think for a long time he was able to compensate because he's so intelligent with the bits of the brain that were still working.
That's insanity. And like, obviously it's going to be hard for a certain demographic to think fondly of David in any way, shape or form. But at the end of the day, the guy just reported what he found in archives. And if that's uncomfortable for you, fuck you. Really? I
will say though, so the other day I was making some photocopies of old photos of David that I was going to bring him, and the guy that was running the printing shop was Jewish, and he recognized who he was in the photos, and he was actually quite nice. You know, I mean, there's some people who've done some of the most horrendous stuff to our families, but there's other people who will shake my hand and go, I don't agree with what he says.
But people have a misconception that because of what he wrote, that he hates Jewish people.
Yeah, I don't think.
Well,
I mean,
why does reporting what you find equate to hate? He literally is a historian who has the responsibility of reporting what he finds. Well, it just baffles me.
I think from some of what I've read of Hitler's War, I think he did say that, you know, he felt sorry for every Jewish life that was taken. But I think it's hard to be sympathetic towards, if you've always been constantly targeted by a specific demographic, you're going to end up disliking them. I mean, I think that we probably would all react in a similar way if you were constantly harassed and targeted. You know, his house was broken into by supposed telecoms engineers.
MI5, whatever you want to call them. It's just been obviously an interesting life that you have been largely sheltered from, and now you're getting your eyes open a lot, I would imagine. And maybe at the start you thought you had an idea of the responsibility of what you were taking on, but I imagine as the year and a half has unfolded, you've really got a good hold of, like, oh my God, there's just so much here. And I
don't think I realized at the beginning, but like, as time has passed, you know, I have people coming to go, do you understand, like, you know, how important this is? So it's sort of slowly being drilled into me in a way.
Like, if his work was to disappear from history, like, that changes things dramatically, you know?
Yeah. I think in the future, it's gonna come to a time where his work is seen in a much more balanced way. But I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think we've got another 50 years.
Going to be in your or my lifetime, I wouldn't think, to be honest.
So.
And I think most geniuses aren't really appreciated until long after their time, because, you know, nobody really likes to see anybody do well. You know, they say they do, but when they start, you know, breaking new ground, and
well, we love to raise people and then sort of beat them down
when they get to the top. It's like, it's a very, very strange makeup of humanity. Really appreciate you taking the time to come over here in person today, Adam, and speak about your granddad's work. Is there anything you would like to speak about before we go? Anything you would like to make people aware of in regards to new projects, or?
Well, if you can follow us on X, which is at Irving_books, because that's where we sort of announce everything new that we're doing.
And I'll link the YouTube and X. Any other social accounts?
We're most prominent on X because they seem to be the one who actually
They're pretending to be free speech.
They're pretending to be free speech, but they sort of seem to have capped us around 57,000 followers. We grew to that really fast, and then it kind of just stopped.
Yeah, they'll realize that you're probably like telling the truth a bit too much, and then there'll be like wee things appearing underneath your posts going citation.
I was told that you should use these hieroglyphic type texts now.
Wingdings.
Wingdings for like certain keywords, because as soon as you mention certain obvious words,
the algorithm picks it up immediately, and like even on YouTube here, like
Elon, what's going on? I thought you're free speech, but
well, Elon is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Do you believe that all of these people who are at the top of their game, these people who have pushed so heavily to us in the media, are organically successful businessmen, or they've been planted there?
No, they're planted there.
By who?
Well, it's just all goes back to family ties. Like Bill Gates, for example, his father was one of the most well-known eugenicists of his time, and his mother, I think, was a judge or something along those lines. Elon Musk's entire family has got ties. Like Donald Trump has got like he's sixth or seventh cousin to like European monarchies, and
really,
like every president of the United States bar one has been related to UK monarchy or European monarchy. So it's just aristocracy under another guys, you know.
It's a lot of weird things that happen amongst these group of people, and then a lot of these people turning up to be married to men in dresses and all this kind of thing.
Yeah,
Bridget Macron.
oh yeah. I mean, who can't produce her brother or sister's pictures anywhere, or a family photo of anything, and like they're taking Candace Owens to the trial over telling the truth. I mean,
is Bridget really going to sit there one day in the courtroom and have to trying to destroy someone financially before it's going to get to
well, like, would you not, if you were a judge, just go like, I know this is a wee bit unsettling, but just take your clothes off from your legs. That
would be one way to sort it out.
Let's just get down to the brass tacks of it.
Yeah, or just like, just do a DNA test. It's clearly going to say whether you were born a man or born a woman.
But that's and all these things.
I wonder why, because Candace's husband's British, isn't he? But they live in the States. And it's in the UK now that we finally defined what a woman is.
Yeah, it was put through like the Scottish court or something. It was the Scottish High Court.
Yeah. Whereas I guess that's not happened yet in the US. So maybe she thinks she has a high chance of winning.
The fact that we've had to go to court to define what a woman is and it's very like telling of the times we live in. And I imagine
they try and get us not to trust our own minds any longer.
Don't believe what you see and don't believe what you hear. Just believe what we tell you and believe what you're told. And I would imagine you're probably going to face a lot more complex and different challenges to what David has faced in the coming years due to the censorship. That's sort of
Leaf life's not going to be boring.
Yeah, no, certainly not. Certainly not with a surname like yours. Have you ever thought of changing it?
Changing my surname? Actually, I was born with the name Brunogrodski because my dad's Polish.
Okay.
So on his side, but in Spain, you carry both surnames. You have, by law, you have to have your mum's and your dad's.
Okay.
And I've gone by Irving in my professional career because it's much easier to spell on the telephone.
It would be. Well, once again, thank you very much. And Irving_books on X and irvingbooks.com.
Yes, that's correct.
So thank you very much for another episode of the Bobcast. And this has been Adam Irving. And like, share, and subscribe.
Yo, you know who it is. Griddle's hot, rumors fly, but the Bops still banging. Let's go! I'm the Batman, Belfast, born and bred, flipping fried eggs while they talk on threads. They tweet that beef, but I bring real meat, bacon stacked high. Bap game elite, they chat like they know me, they don't know jack. Talking mad smoke while I'm serving a stack. Hash brown hot with the yolk that runs. I break more fast than 100 nuns. They hate, they try to cancel my stand. Still flipping bats with one greasy hand. False accusations and I ain't shook. My grill's